On This Week in History.
Sponsored by the Great British Expos.
Home of the UK's largest regional business expos. Find out more at greatbritishexpos.co.uk.
And this is On This Week in History with Paul Waite.
Hurrah!
And I'm joined by my trusted scribe and intelligentsia, Mr. Cullum.
Hello.
Mr. Cullum is reading about lots of wonderful things, so he's a very good person. And of course we have Drew.
Hello there, mate.
What else can we say? Drew adding a bit of normality to the proceedings. So, on This Week in History, these are events leading up to the week ending the 25th of July. Yes, in no particular order. So, kicking off today, so nothing happened before 1487. Isn't that weird?
Nothing ever.
Well, apparently not, because there's nothing I could find about it. So, the first fact is probably something only I would put into Not This Week in History. So, in 1487, the citizens of Leeuwarden, that's L-E-E-U, Warden, of the Netherlands, rebelled against a ban on foreign beer. Isn't that brilliant?
Well, that's quite understandable.
Yeah, I think that's rather wonderful, personally. In 1567, Mary Queen of Scots was forced to abdicate as Queen of Scotland, and was, of course, replaced, Callum, by...
Elizabeth.
No, Scotland.
Oh, I can't remember then.
Her son.
James?
The
First.
sixth and first.
Sixth, yeah.
Yeah, so James VI of Scotland, and eventually went on to become the king after Elizabeth died, of course.
Yes, of course.
Yes. So it's interesting that, so Mary, she's obviously like a Scottish martyr, but, to some extent, she only got in the position she did because of... I don't think she was a particularly nice woman, and of course she was very naive and got into a lot of political intrigue, I would say.
Yes.
Interesting fact, 1664, quite a long time ago. Drew will find this interesting, I think. 4 British ships arrived in Boston
Boston.
en route to drive the Dutch out of New York, which of course at the time was called New Amsterdam.
Not many people know that. New York was called New Amsterdam. It was originally founded by the Dutch.
Which is why the song is so good they named it twice. New York.
It's a shame, because I was just about to say, New York would have been more like Amsterdam than York. But let's face it, New York's nothing like York, is it?
Not really. A very fascinating fact, which obviously has caused a lot of trouble since. In 1704, English and Dutch troops occupied Gibraltar, which was previously obviously controlled by Spain. Spanish have sulked about it ever since and still want it back. But I have to say, the Gibraltarians are intensely loyal to the Crown.
I think I saw like a survey that says something like 87% of them wanted to stay British.
More maybe, I think.
Yeah.
Right, so Callum, help me. Where is number 5 on here? So this morning, here we are, yes. So I actually forgot to get my list typed this week, didn't I, Drew? Because I'm a clothead. I forgot everything this week. I didn't give you 70 minutes too late. Didn't give you my plagiarised songs list. What's happening to the world? 1797, the great Admiral Horatio Nelson lost more than 300 men in his right arm during the failed conquest of Tenerife. Or, as I like to call it, Tenerife. Yeah, so that's how he ended up like this. I'm just doing an impersonation of the man with no right arm. Well, half a one,
People on YouTube will see that.
In 1814, George Stephenson. I was taught this at school, even London school. George Stephen introduced his first steam locomotive, which, very interestingly, is fascinating. So, you being a knowledgeable man. So, the date was 1814. Just bear that in mind. Then think about what happened a year later. Famous battle of 1 year later. And this very, very... I tell you what the locomotive was called was Blucher. It's almost like he was clairvoyant.
Yes, isn't it?
So, of course, we wouldn't have won Waterloo if Marshal Blucher, with the Prussian troops, came into the battle about 6:30 in the evening.
Yeah, a bit late.
Just as we were marginally losing, I would say, maybe.
I'd say that's probably, fair to say,
But, of course, with his very famous... They wore very famous black jackets, so they were very striking, as you can imagine.
Powerful force.
The Prussians. So, anyway, it's got nothing to do with it, but...
that is interesting.
I presume that the locomotive was...
I thought you were going to say it was called Waterloo for a second.
Well, that'd be something, wouldn't it? I mean, I think if it was a train, it'd be called Waterloo Sunset.
Yeah.
Then they'd all go,
There's a Waterloo There is a Waterloo station there, isn't there?
Of course, one of the biggest stations.
Is it?
But Waterloo is the gateway to Europe, isn't it?
There you go.
This is an interesting one again. In 1831, Belgium wins independence from the Netherlands.
Okay.
1831.
Why then? Right, because I'm not an expert on Belgium. If they used to be owned by the Dutch, so to speak, right? Why do they speak French?
They don't, do they?
The Belgians?
Some of them speak French.
Do some of them speak Dutch?
Yeah, it's Flemings and Walloons, isn't there?
Yeah. I know that the Flemish are very different than the others. So the Flemish speak Dutch, do they?
Dutch, German, and French, apparently.
Oh, right. Do you know what? I didn't know that.
And they don't get on at all.
Yeah, I know. The Flemish, I said I'm not an expert on them, but if I'm right in thinking, the Flemish have a bit more of an interesting and more like honourable history. Is it right? Am I right in saying that, in your opinion?
I don't know. I think Belgium was actually Burgundy in old times. I think I'm right in saying that. So I think Belgium in sort of medieval times was actually the dukedom of Burgundy.
Is that got something to do with the wine as well?
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah.
So the wine was originally from what is modern day Belgium, is it?
I'm not sure, because Burgundy obviously still exists as a.
Well, yeah,
as
of
a
course.
region
But
of
obviously,
France.
wine's been along. Yeah.
Yeah, so Burgundy was quite a big kingdom, and of course at that time, France was by no means united. In fact, so for instance, what's her name? Joan of Arc was actually handed into the English by people who are technically French, albeit not necessarily on the same side of her. So I said we're going to over budget, Callum. So next we have
On This Week in History with Outstanding Paul.
This Week in History, and it's Paul coming back to you with lots of facts.
Hello.
Even when we're not talking to you, I am still, for instance, listening, engaged in intercourse with Callum, who's regaling me with various interesting facts about Angevins and Plantagenets. It is such a delight to be in the studio.
Goujons.
Yeah, Geoffrey Goujons. 1837, the first commercial use of an electric telegraph, which was in Camden Town, would you believe?
Camden.
1851, window tax was abolished in the UK.
Oh, I was going to say.
So this is
Good day.
again. I actually studied this. The government, in its infinite wisdom, I can't remember when it was, 1700 and something, decided to introduce a tax on windows. That seemed like on the basis that like the more windows you had, probably the bigger the property was, I guess, or something. And so you'll actually see even today, if you walk around London, you'll see
Hardly any windows.
You'll see buildings where clearly the window space has been
Filled in.
So
Yeah.
that was to avoid paying the tax.
Bricked up.
This is only in 1851, so it's 170 years ago.
I wonder if it was also something to do with like sound. So if you had a window, obviously it'd be more sound cancelling in a city. So that was considered like a privilege.
What about beard tax? That was one as well, wasn't it? You used to get taxed on beards.
Well, I thought
Did you?
I thought
Yeah.
you were talking about beer tax. But
That's what I thought you
beards.
meant.
let's go back. Anyway, in 1886, China takes the UK protectorate of Burma, which of course is now known as Myanmar. True story. This when I was chairman of a company in Bangkok, my great chum Dean Robinson had a maid who came from Burma, and I've never seen such a sad-looking woman in my life.
Really?
No, she just looked. Her eyes were just. I found that she was like full of sorrow, but I didn't see it. I looked at. I just saw her as full of sorrow. It was quite.
You should write a song about that. That's inspired me.
Yeah, no, seriously.
The woman that was full of sorrow.
And of course, Burma is a country that, as a little boy, I'm fascinated by. And of course, it was played such a huge part in the colonial British Empire. And of course, now it's been nothing but trouble with military dictatorships, etc., for quite a long time. So, very, very sad, really.
Of course, famous for their Burmese pythons, one of the two biggest snakes in the world.
1907, Korea becomes a protectorate of Japan. So we talked about this on other on This Week in History. So the Japanese have not been overly pleasant to their neighbours, shall we say. There's some terrible things to Chinese women, has to be said. It's interesting, actually, when we interviewed Drew, because seeing if Drew's paying attention, which is not normally the case, when we interviewed Rob Cochrane the other day, Chief Executive of Academy in Jiangsu Province, Nanjing, and I asked him whether there was still a problem with China and Japan. And I expected him to say, no, of course not. And of course he said, yeah, even worse than I thought, didn't he? It actually quite staggered me. He said, yeah. What did I say? I said, is it like, I think exact words, is it similar to how the English would see the Germans? Callum?
And he said it was worse.
And he said it was much worse than that. So
Really?
Yeah.
I have to say, I'm a little bit concerned about what's going on with China at the moment, aren't you? I don't want to get this into a political thing, but
I'm not. Obviously, we have a business in China. I wouldn't like to.
Oh no, of course, yeah.
So yeah.
Long live China!
I wasn't trying to close the debate down. In 1909, Louis Blériot made the first aeroplane flight across the English Channel.
Oh.
Had a little moustache, if I remember rightly. He actually was on a poster on my wall when I was a little boy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's my mum was very good when it comes to
I always think it's fascinating how in 60 years people went from the first flight to landing on the moon. Crazy though, that, isn't it?
Yeah, and then I guess you could say that things have slowed down a bit.
Massively.
In some respects.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, where are we now? That was 12. So there. In 1920, British East Africa was renamed Kenya and became a British Crown colony. So that's where Uncle Johnny stayed for a bit.
Long time in the 90s, wasn't it? What, like 5 years or something?
Yeah, Kenya got quite good at rugby at one point. Lots of good now, especially at sevens. Kenya always been a country I quite admired. Home of the Maasai Warriors, I think, and brilliant runners. Like
I remember John always.
Runners.
Yeah, I remember John always saying that it was like the best place in Africa. He said like he absolutely loved it there, didn't he?
Yeah, although I have had some business dealings in Kenya, and they've it's become a little bit corrupt, shall we say, over the last few years.
I think that's a running problem with a lot of African countries, isn't it?
And of course, what's happening in Africa generally is China's buying it up.
Is it really?
Oh God,
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, just about all their capital investment in Africa is coming from China. They're building all the new railways.
Really?
Yeah, all the modernisation is taking place.
They've become fantastic at building railways, haven't they? China.
Anyway, one of my least favourite people of all time, Eamon De Valera. In 1837, Eamon De Valera wins the Irish election. This is obviously the Free State of Ireland by this stage. And I would say that he was. I would actually regard him as an enemy. I feel that strongly about it. So
Wow.
Yeah, far from being on Britain's side in the war, used to let US Nazi submarines dock in Dublin Harbour, this sort of thing.
Yeah, awful.
Obviously, very learned-looking man, has a very distinct look with his glasses, etc. Anyway, one of the problems of being an idiot like myself is... here we go. So the last fact before the end of this part is in 1942. This is an unbelievable statistic, Drew. In 1942, this is the Warsaw Ghetto was cleared out by the Nazis. 300,000 Jews were sent to their death in Treblinka extermination camp. Can you just? I mean, that's like 8 Bridgewaters. So you know.
Yeah, cool. When you put it like that, yeah.
Everyone in Bridgewater 8 times being effectively sent away and killed. So sorry to send you on that one. And next we have...
On This Week in History with Outstanding Paul.
Welcome back to On This Week in History. And Paul nearly did a big faux pas by clicking on the wrong On This Week in History. But fortunately, my trusty steed, Mr. Drew, stopped me from being a complete nutter. So anyway, we've got 11 facts, I think, Callum, to get in. So we've got to motor on. So, 1943, Mussolini was dismissed as the Italian premier and arrested on the authority of Vittorio Emanuele III, or Victor Emmanuel if you want to be in English. Interesting how it took the Italians losing the war effectively for them to do such a thing. And of course he ended up being famously
Beheaded?
No, he was hung by wire, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Him and his mistress, whose name escapes me. 1952, we were talking about this the other day, Drew. Puerto Rico became a self-governing USA Commonwealth. Of course, as I say quite often, they held a referendum recently, about the last 4 years, as to whether they wanted to become the 51st state, and they voted against. Which is quite surprising, really.
Puerto Rico.
One of the most disgusting people in history, one of the most loathsome thing, from my point of view, as a very sort of chivalrous man that would definitely, if I saw a woman being beaten up by 10 blokes, I would probably
shield
be
her.
prepared to die for it without thinking about it.
Shield her with your mask.
So Edward Kennedy, obviously brother of JFK. He pleaded guilty to leaving the scene of an accident. Very famous, this. You may not know about it, Callum. So he pleaded guilty to leaving the scene of an accident a week after the Chappaquiddick car accident that killed Mary Jo Kopechne. So effectively, Kennedy had a mistress who was Mary Jo Kopechne. He was a lot younger than him. Effectively, they were in a car that he was driving. Went off the road. I don't know what they were doing. Ended up in the river, and he basically got out and left her to drown.
What the hell?
Yeah, this is what the stink was all about.
What the hell?
And he was simply found guilty of leaving the scene of an accident. That's what he was actually.
What?
He got. I can't remember. He got.
Did you say that she was pregnant?
Maybe. I'm not sure.
So she was potentially
Can
carrying
you have a look?
child as well.
Can you have a look for us, Drew?
See if she was pregnant.
Mary Jo Kopechne, Kopechne. So anyway, got to move on.
Wow.
Got to move on, as they say. 1974, Turkey invaded Cyprus. I've been to Cyprus many times. Very interesting when you go to Nicosia, which is the capital, and you see bullet holes everywhere in the doors, etc., etc. And of course, it's now a land that's very much divided.
Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots.
Really sad. Anyway, 1978, one of my favourite bands of all time. John Lydon forms Public Image Limited, which is after the end of the Sex Pistols. So I think, John Lydon, I think Callum's talked about this before. John Lydon's actually quite a smart cookie. Obviously, effectively exploited the media to become hugely successful with the Sex Pistols. And then I think had a project which was probably more him, shall we say?
Yeah,
invested his soul into it more. So that was cool. Where are we next? So we're going to move on to try. Where are you, Paul? Come on, Paul, help! What's going on? So we're going to go out of order. 22. 1994. Jordan and Israel ended a 46-year state of war. That's just incredible, isn't it? Really? I think.
Yeah.
Incredible situation. There we go. So sorry, out of order. So in 1993, this is something I remember very well. A bloke I hold in very high esteem. Still commentates on the Tour de France, etc. Now. Chris Boardman cycled a world record distance of 52.27 kilometres in 1 hour. So that's about 33 miles, something like that.
Very, very impressive. Very impressive.
Great man. Where are we? 23. So 1999, Lance Armstrong wins the first of his 7 tours. Now, Lance Armstrong would be somebody that I probably could almost say, you could say I adorated him. I found him incredibly inspiring, his battle against cancer.
I remember you did.
And I used to identify with him, actually, and he was actually quite responsible for helping me train so hard to do the John O'Groats thing, for instance. And so when it turned out he was a cheat, I actually felt it was like a personal betrayal.
Yeah, I remember, yeah.
And I think even now, I've watched quite a lot of stuff. His attitude now is quite staggering. He's so arrogant.
Yeah, really bad.
His attitude is pretty much, look, everyone else is cheating.
Yeah.
So I cheated as well, but I was the best of all of them, so I won.
Yeah.
There's nothing more sort of self-effacing or anything than that. So
yeah.
Got to move on. 2012, Italy's credit rating was downgraded to CCC+. So bearing in mind the top rating is A+++. So that would mean, probably Italy would have a rating below any bank, for instance. So bank, one of the banks I bank with, Handelsbanken, they've got a rating like AA+ or something.
Yeah.
So when you think they've got AA+, and this is a country,
yeah,
and it was downgraded to CCC+. So I'm not quite sure. It'll be interesting to find out what Greece's rating was, because I shouldn't think that was very good.
No.
In 2012, the UK recession continued with a double dip. So effectively, I don't know if you guys know this, in order for a recession to be considered to be a recession, you have to have negative growth 2 consecutive quarters.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah. So that's just a bit of education for you. 2017, I love this, but this is dedicated to my son, Callum. Sperm counts. This is reported after a scientific study that sperm counts had halved. This is an amazing fact. Sperm counts had halved in the last 40 years.
You can believe it, though, can't you?
Isn't that staggering?
Yeah, but look at, without being rude, look at the guys, say, in your day or in Grandad's day compared to today. There's a lot of effeminate fellas walking around nowadays. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I'm just saying I'm not personally very surprised. What I would like to know, though, is exactly why that is. And I'm sure there's probably some some.
I think it'd be things like fluoride and things like that.
Fluoride
maybe.
in the water, maybe
Stuff like that, and additives. Anyway, we haven't. We'll maybe you should
debate
put
this
a
another
response.
time. Yes.
So the final fact today, again, I know Callum will find very interesting. In 2018, a liquid lake was found on Mars under its south pole. So I'm really interested in astronomy. So anyway, a really good bunch of mixed facts today, I think. So that's the end of On This Week in History, brought to you in association with Great British Expos, my great chums there. And next we have the Maccabees and All in Your Rows.
On This Week in History,
Sponsored by the Great British Expos.
home of the UK's largest regional business expos. Find out more at greatbritishexpos.co.uk.